Okay, so first off, I just want to, if we could all give Benjamin Roberts a big round of applause over here. Okay, for anybody who doesn't know, we were in Florida this past week. We did a few classes over there. They were very beautiful, thank God. One of them was with Gedalia Fenster. One of them was with Michael Ben Melech. I did a couple on my own over there. And this is all b'schut Benjamin Roberts. He had a lot of Mesirut Nefesh to get us there, to set up something with me and Gedalia, and also to get me to the flight and to get me back. So anyway, everything that we've done so far, even though there's been a lot of miracles, there's also a lot of maniot whenever you try and do something good. I knew when I was about to miss my flight over there that something special was going to happen because I got in with 1 minute to go. And it only was because Benny was at the bank. I was going to get something from the bank, and then I called Benny. I'm like, Benny, where are you at? He's like, I'm right next to you. So thank God. And if not for that, Benny's like, yeah, I think you're going to miss the flight. I'm like, oh, yeah. So then he drove me over. So first off, I want to say thank you to Benny. And I want to say thank you to everybody, all the students of Tzion, for all the support since the beginning, making something like that happen. It was a very special trip. And I think that we so to speak, entered into a lot of new worlds over there. I had a lot of incredible feedback from the people who were there after the class, as well as a lot of texts from across the country following it. I guess I didn't realize what happens when you're connected to social media since I've been off of it for years. But apparently there's a lot of people on that thing. Yeah. So anyway, we're getting a lot of texts, thank God, people who are they were moved by the class. Apparently, Gedalia had a class with Rav Shalom Arush today, and someone who was watching the class said that he actually mentioned the class from this past week, because apparently they did they asked him about different things that people have said about Gedalia's classes and how they've impacted him. Apparently 3 of the people spoke specifically about the class that we did together. And so then they asked, like, who's this person? And he said, oh, it's Rabbi Kalmus, whatever. I didn't get to see it. I don't know, but the whole thing is very surreal. And just as like a point to mention for everybody here, I ended up staying with the rabbi who gave me that book 7 years ago called The Secret Life of God, that made me realize that Hashem existed and completely turned my life upside down. And to see the full circle nature of Hashem, that, so to speak, from that point till 7 years later, to come back to that home, even though he used to live in California, now I'm staying with him in Miami, and so to speak, having this very surreal moment to be teaching with someone who's affected a lot of people's lives in a positive way. And I remember doing Hippolyta in my car and just crying like a baby, because I know, and this is something that I said since then, but I think it's important to know for everybody here. We all believe in these teachings. We all believe when Rabbi Nachman says that there's no such thing as Jeyush in the world. We all believe, like Rabbi Nachman says, that all the maniot can turn into ne'imot, that all of the difficulties, the suffering, the challenges can ultimately turn into something very sweet. However, when you are working at it for days or weeks or months or years or decades, even though somewhere deep down inside you do believe that, and that's why you don't stop, at the same time, to never actually see that full circle thing, it's hard to keep going. And I just want to say to everybody here that I'm included in that family. And this was not a complete full circle. I'm not done yet. I have a lot to do. There's with Hashem, a lot of people I hope to help. Okay, good. But just a little taste to see how Hashem is kind of like 1,000 steps ahead of each one of us. And we are feeling all the time like we're out of control and we don't understand why things are happening to us. And even though we're doing the best we can, we don't see the results of it. But you don't understand that Hashem doesn't just see tomorrow or weeks from now or months from now, not just years from now, he sees generations from now. And the main point to know is that whatever is your deepest ratzon, whatever is the thing in your heart which is driving you, even if it's not conscious, even if it's not something you admit to yourself, even if it's not something you've ever said out loud, Torah teaches that Hashem knows your innermost will, and that everything he does in your life is to bring you to the revelation of that innermost point in your heart. So therefore, if you're not necessarily going for it, or let's say you are going for it, but you don't actually know how it turned out like that, so only Hashem does. And it could be just like it was a little bit in my case, that my dream to always help those people who are suffering the most could only happen if I suffered the most. Now, I would never have signed up for that to begin with, or ever thought that that would actually bring me to be able to help those people. But sitting like I was in Gedalia's substance abuse clinic before I left the trip, and I ended up running groups there like I did like a decade ago in graduate school. But instead of me doing it and feeling sick while I'm doing it, or feeling depressed as I'm doing it, feeling like I need the help as much as the people who are listening to me, to feel really that I feel whole to some extent, and to be able to help these people and to give to them without, so to speak, me sinking or falling into that dark place that they're currently in, and actually just being able to lift them up was a tremendously sweet thing. And it was a little bit of the maniot that turned into ne'imot. So I just want to give you all chizuk to know that you don't know how you're going to get to that thing that you dream to do. And even if you think you have a plan, that doesn't mean that plan actually gets you there. However, the events that are actually taking place in your life, which may seem completely contrary to your goals, are actually bringing you to your goals. The only way to get there is to have faith. And for sure that you should be connected to truth. Because if you're not connected to truth and you don't express your faith every day and you need bodhidut, you'll never get to that point that you get to see the full circle, the full realization. This is partly what we're going to speak about tonight. So while I was there, apparently there's a new president who's coming in. You guys know that I'm not so connected to social media. And obviously this sounds like something which transcends social media. This is like a moment which I guess is very important for the whole universe. However, I just know that Chazal say that once a non-Jewish leader becomes the leader of a country, he loses his bechira, his free will. So once I heard that enough, it kind of is, it seems like wasted effort to emotionally invest myself in who's going to be the president of the US or who's going to be the leader of this country. If in fact, once they become the leader, they lose their capacity to choose and Hashem chooses for them. So then it's a little bit, it would be like wasted effort, and obviously we're trying so hard to help so many people. It's not for me to get involved. However, it did make me think about the fact that we need a leader, a real leader. And we know that the Mashiach is going to be the leader, the final leader of the Jewish people. Now, what is it that actually brings about his saying, hey guys, I'm here. And he's probably hopefully not going to have that accent. I don't know what just came over me there. Please forgive me. But what is it that, so to speak, elicits or arouses the Mashiach to announce his arrival? Okay. So for this, we're going to need to understand something very deep. Every single Jewish soul, both male and female, has a highest part of their own soul, which is called their nitzutz, their spark of Mashiach. Now, very interestingly, as opposed to, let's say, other religions that they believe that the Mashiach is going to come and save us when we are like not, so to speak, doing anything to merit that, the Torah actually teaches it will be the arousal of each of our individual sparks of Mashiach, our actualization of our own spiritual potential, which is going to cause the Mashiach himself to announce his arrival. Okay? So now the question is, what is that spark of Mashiach inside of me that I need to be tapping into in order for the Mashiach himself to reveal himself? So for this, we need to understand who is the Mashiach. And from this, we can know what is that part of ourself we need to awaken. So even though he's going to come from the house of David, right? And we know that Mashiach must be from the tribe of Yehuda. At the same time, it's taught in the Zohar that Moshe Rabbeinu is going to be the Mashiach. So this is hard to understand. Is it going to be David or is it going to be Moshe? So the answer is both. That he physically will look, act, and sound like David. And in that way, he will be very comparable to David HaMelech, King David. And he will be a reincarnation of David. And at the same time, what's going to make him unique or sort of set him apart or above all leaders prior to this is, despite the fact that he has the kingship, the ability to speak like David, he will actually have the soul of Moshe. Everybody with me? He'll have the body of David. He will have the sound of David. He will have the look of David. But what he will be teaching will be rooted in and drawn from his soul, which is actually that of Moshe Rabbeinu. This is alluded to by the story of Yaakov when he takes the bracha, the birthright, from his brother Esav, and Yitzchak says to him, this is unusual because this is the voice of Yaakov, this is the Kol Yaakov, but this is the hands of Esav. So it's explained in Chassidut and Kabbalah that the fact that it's the Kol Yaakov, the Kol, the voice, always is a manifestation of the soul. And the Arizal teaches that the soul of Yaakov was Moshe. Okay? So that means it's the voice of Moshe. This is the reason why it said it smelled like Gan Eden. Because this was the soul of Mashiach that was inside of him. However, his hands, they felt like Esav's hands. And we know that David HaMelech, King David, is the tikkun, he's the rectification for Esav. That's the reason why they both had red hair. That's the reason why their hair was curly. That's the reason why they both were very influential. They were both figures in which were able to, so to speak, impose their will upon others. However, Esav used that to hurt people, and David used that same ability to influence others, but he only did it to bring people closer to Hashem. So David is the rectification for Esav. So therefore, he's going to be the combination of both. Okay. So he needs to have the soul of Moshe. What is the first thing that we learn about Moshe? Because we just started Sefer Shemot. What did we just learn about Moshe Rabbeinu? What's the first thing we see about him in the beginning? So right when Batya finds Moshe, what did the Torah say that Moshe was doing? He was crying. The Midrash says something very interesting. The Midrash says that because there was, so to speak, word in the back by the water cooler, that the Mashiach of the Jewish people was going to be a Jewish boy who was going to be born in Mitzrayim. So when Paro heard about this from his advisors, and he heard also that his demise would come through water, that's why they ended up throwing all the Jewish boys in water, because ultimately this would take care of the problem. However, how did they plan on finding this boy? So the Midrash says that they understood that to be the leader of the Jewish people and to take the Jewish people out of exile, it must be that he has empathy. Because who else would want to take a group of people who are so far away from the tachlit, from the purpose of life, even though it's going to go completely against their nature, and deal with all the trials and tribulations that comes with leading a group of people out of slavery? That person must have tremendous empathy. So Paro told all of his people, not unsimilar to Germany, when they went into the homes to try and find Jewish boys and girls, even that were being hidden. And what was the clue that Paro told them to look for? Said, do something to scare them, and if you hear crying, intense crying, you'll know the boy or girl is Jewish. Why? Because the whole entire stamp of a Jewish soul, the epitome of the Jewish soul, is that he has empathy for those who suffer. And we see that when Moshe was found, he was crying so intensely that the Torah says he was na'ar. He had the crying of a youth. It wasn't even normal baby crying. It was the crying that comes when you're able to actually empathize with the pain of others, and you're crying because of that pain. Now, later on, what's the first episode you learn about Moshe? Moshe himself sees that his brothers are being subjugated by the Mitzrim. Thank you. And this subjugation was causing him tremendous inner pain to the extent that he went out to stop the suffering of the Jewish people. And he even put his life on the line by killing the Mitzri, burying him in the sand, and ultimately he had to flee as a result. So you see that all of the first moments of Moshe's life are leading you to one singular theme about Moshe that, so to speak, makes him different from everyone else in history. And that is his tremendous empathy for the suffering of humanity. Where does Moshe get this from? And this is going to lead us to the tikkun at the end of this class. This has to do with the fact that Moshe, his name comes from the fact that he's drawn from water. So we'll get there in a second, okay? So now this is the clue. What is it that each of us has to tap into within ourselves in order to be able to arouse the soul of Mashiach to say, I'm here and I'm ready to take us all out? So we each need to tap into our spark of Mashiach, which is called your rachamim, your empathy. Specifically where? So Rabbi Nachman says like this in the Likutei Moharan. This is a very deep thing that he says. And he says like this. What is it that's causing Jewish leadership to go into exile? Why is it that we don't have leaders that we can believe in, that we can rely on, that we can ask our questions to, and we can be rested assured that this is for sure what we need to be doing? Why are the true leaders, in the words of a very wise man from Detroit, why won't they please stand up? Why are they? So I visited Detroit recently. So when I saw 8 Mile, I got excited. I was like, this is a real place? Not much going on over there. Okay. So anyway, what is the reason why they're not standing up? And instead, let's say, for instance, you go on YouTube, you're going to see a lot of leaders yelling about things, but not necessarily holding on to true wisdom for you. That when you try and take on the things that they say, you don't actually see fruit in your life, or you don't resonate with what they're saying. It seems, so to speak, that they're asserting their authority, but they don't necessarily have the juice to back it up. So the reason is actually not their fault. It's ours. Because a very deep thing, Jewish leadership, which is called Malchut, is surrounded by something called Emunah. So when the Jewish Emunah is in exile, meaning when the Jewish people do not have simple Peshuta, Emunah in Hashem, then as a result of that, the Malchut leadership goes into exile. Rabbi Nachman says, as a result, what ends up happening is that Jewish leaders who could lead the Jewish people, and obviously Mashiach is the epitome of this, they end up thinking that they're not worthy to be leaders. And so they don't take the mantle. We actually see this very clearly with Moshe, that when Hashem came to Moshe and said to lead the Jewish people, Moshe, in a very unusual way, said, I can't do it. Now, this is very hard to understand, but because we see all these other leaders, that Abraham is like a fierce warrior. He takes the mantle like that. He doesn't think twice about it. Yaakov Avinu as well. He goes against his own ratzon, and he does it because Hashem wants him to. But Moshe Rabbeinu is the first person who has the chutzpah to say, I don't feel capable. I don't feel like I can do it. So now Rabbi Nachman says a very, very big secret. He says, do you know why he thought he couldn't do it? Because the emunah of the Jewish people was in exile. And whenever the faith of the Jewish people is in exile, then Jewish leaders have to go into exile. And then he himself will think that he's not qualified to take the job, but he only feels that because emunah is in exile. And if emunah were to come back out, then he would feel that he is capable. Everybody with me right now? Yes, that's why we all have to tap into emunah within us. Now, the very interesting part of this lesson in Likutei Moharan, that's 18, is he says that what is a quick way for me to, so to speak, establish that I have emunah? Not doing an hour of hibodedut, not going to learn Torah, not, so to speak, doing something else, having emunah in chachamim, to listen to the advice of tzaddikim. These are things that we usually speak about. But is there something I can do instantaneously that taps into my spark of Mashiach, rectifies my faith, shows that I have it, and allows Jewish leaders to take the mantle and take us out of exile? So Rabbi Nachman says something amazing. It's like this. What is the opposite of faith? What is the opposite of emunah? So obviously it's a lack of emunah. But Chazal teach that what is, so to speak, the epitome act of a lack of emunah? Does anybody want to guess here? No, lack of emunah. Trying to do things on your own, okay. Where specifically, let's say emotionally, what emotion would come out of you, would exude from you? Anger. Because if you think about it, it's very deep. Why does a person get angry? Because he wants it to happen a certain way that he feels is the right way, and it's not happening that way. Everybody with me? So when I get angry as a result of that, that's where anger comes from. I'm trying to control the situation, not because I have bad intentions. I might have the best intentions. Now I'm with somebody else or I'm in a situation and it's not going according to my will. It's happening some other way. So now what's my response? I get angry. Now very deeply, Rabbi Nachman teaches that anger is the show of a pagam and emunah. Because anger is a sign that I do not accept that what's happening is taking place is from Hashem. I'm trying to make it according to me, to control the situation. Is everybody with me?
It would be any negative emotion.
But specifically anger. Why? Because the Torah teaches that whenever you see charon af, whenever you see anger in the world, you'll know there's a avodah zarah. This is a chazal. This is something that the rabbi said 2,000 years ago. So what is a avodah zarah? Avodah zarah means I believe in something that's different than Hashem. So the normal way we think about it is Hashem is angry. And it's coming from us having avodah zarah. But Rabbi Nachman's saying you're angry because you have avodah zarah. Everybody with me? It's a twist. So therefore, what is specifically like the archetypal emotion which exudes the fact that at that moment I lack faith? It's anger. So now Rabbi Nachman says, when you get in a situation that you get angry, that's okay. Not only is it okay to feel that you're angry, Rabbi Nachman actually says it is an opportunity to tap into your spark of Mashiach. How is that? Because the whole spark of Mashiach is rachamim, to be compassionate, to be empathetic. That's the opposite of anger. So when you feel anger, if instead of acting on the anger, Rabbi Nachman says, you take a moment and you breathe, and you force yourself to be empathetic to the situation, to the person, to the circumstances, instead of acting on your anger, you then cause that real leaders of Jewish people will come out of the woodwork and take us out of exile. Because you have elicited, you have tapped into, you have actualized your spark of Mashiach inside of you. And by the way, just an interesting point, it's not brought here, but it's brought elsewhere. Rabbi Nachman says, what is the gematria of Charon Af? It's 345. It's the same gematria as Moshe. Because Moshe is the tikkun for anger. Moshe represents empathy, which is the opposite of anger. Rabbi Nachman actually says that if a person who deals with anger can shift and transform that anger into compassion, he literally has the ruach of Mashiach inside of himself. Now, obviously, this is a whole game changer. Because one of the reasons why we struggle to overcome our difficulties or lackings is because we feel nebach, right? Let's say, for instance, I'm getting angry all the time. And I'm saying to myself, oh, I wish I didn't have this. I know it's causing difficulties in my life. I know it's not helping me, but I just wish I didn't have it. But if you understand the fact that you have anger is an opportunity. And it's not a lacking in and of itself. It's only a lacking in and of itself when you leave it at anger. But if instead of acting on the anger, when it comes up specifically, you then tap into compassion instead, empathy instead, you will literally create something in the world that can't be affected through anything else, simply by acting compassionately instead of acting on that anger. So now the obvious question is, but how do you do that? Because if I would have known how to do that, I would have always acted compassionately instead of acting on my anger, right? Right? We could take that lesson and say, okay, great. Now, when something happens, I go home, I get angry, I'm just going to be compassionate. But you're going to find it's very difficult to do. What's the reason? It has to also do where Moshe comes from. Moshe, the Torah says, because he was drawn from the water. The water is always a code word for what's called da'at in Kabbalah. Da'at means God consciousness. Specifically, that I understand that everything comes from Hashem. That is called da'at. If at any moment that I know in my mind and my heart that whatever takes place in my life is the result of whatever Hashem wants to be happening, that is all that's happening, that's called me having da'at. Moshe is drawn from that place, meaning he's always in that state of existence, that he understands it's always Hashem, because he comes from water, he comes from da'at. That's what it means that he's drawn from the water. And that is connected, Rabbi Nachman says, to the Ruach of Elokim, that's Marchefet, that is hovering over the water. Because the Ruach of Elokim that's hovering over the water, says Chassidus, is the Mashiach himself. Why is he hovering over the water? For the same reason that Moshe is drawn from the water. So now we have a very big clue. Just like Moshe gets his compassion from the fact that he knows it's coming from Hashem. So let's take a practical example. Let's say, for instance, it's 9:41 right now. I have, let's say, for instance, I come home. Chas v'sholom, this would never happen. But I get into a huge argument with my wife when I get home. Okay, nobody's ever heard of such a thing, right? The Ashkenazi men, we bend. You never heard of such a thing until we snap. Okay? But let's say, for instance, we did. So let's say, for instance, I'm just giving an example. I come home and my wife says to me, why are you always teaching? Why don't we spend any time together? Okay. You guys don't relate to this or resonate with this at all because it's not a real example. But let's say this happens. So now I could say, what are you talking about? You're the one who told me you want me to teach because we don't have enough money for the apartment and I have to be able to support the family. So I literally took this class because you told me. I'm teaching all the time because you told me we don't have enough money. Yeah, but you have to teach all the time. I thought you're going to spend time with me also. So I was like, yeah, that's why I stopped teaching the class to begin with, and we can go into a whole thing. And obviously, where could this go? This could escalate more and more and more, right? This is like obviously a very PG version of a fight. Okay. Or before responding, I could say to myself, because obviously this would cause somebody to get angry. Why? Because that person themselves is the cause of me taking this class to teach. I'm just giving you an example. This guy in the back is like bobblehead over here because he's resonating so much that it doesn't stop bobbling. Thank God. It's good. So now, okay. Okay, good. So if I'm not coming out of the water, I'm not connected to the water, I'm not hovering over the water, meaning I don't have da'at, it's being concealed from me. So we're for sure going to get into a fight. And that's anger. And in the place of anger, then you have a lack of emunah. But if instead of acting, I recognize that this doesn't even make sense, that's your first clue that it's from Hashem. If it doesn't make sense, it's always from Hashem. But if it really doesn't make sense, it's for sure from Hashem. And you never get better opportunities than this than with your own spouse or your family. So when that happens, don't respond. First, say to yourself in your mind or leave the room before you react. Don't worry, she's not going anywhere. You're not going anywhere. It's okay. Leave the room and say before you respond, everything that's happening right now is because you want it to happen. Why? Because you love me. And why is that good? Because this is going to bring me closer to you. Now, your response to the event could then be empathetic. That you walk back in the room and you say, you know what, honey, you're right. I have a lot of classes. I don't mean to be teaching so much. I'm just worried about how we're going to support ourselves, but I have to figure out another way. You're right. Also good. What is that an act of? That's an act of Empathy. Yeah, but according to the truth, I should just get upset about the fact that this is even a thing. That I'm literally toiling day and night so that I could support, and then when I come home, and I'm only doing that for you, right? But these are the tests which we face every day. And Rabbi Nachman teaches that when you kick into rachamim, instead of kicking into anger, meaning you don't act on the anger, and instead you act empathetic, you literally draw the Ruach HaMashiach into the world, and you bring the cause of his arrival closer, both you personally in your life and the actual Jewish leader that we're all looking for. And we know that the Jewish leaders are in exile. So what's the reason that Jewish leaders are in exile? The reason is because the Jewish people are angry. So what would be the solution to this whole problem? We need to hover on the water. We need to draw da'at. And we know that there's no da'at like the Torah of Rabbi Nachman. Why am I saying that? Because if you ask anybody which Torah, so to speak, when you learn it, makes you feel more than anything else that everything is from Hashem, they'll tell you, oh, Breslov teaches that. What about the thing that I'm struggling with? I have an illness. Oh, it's not because genetic, it's because Hashem wants you to. Or the fact that I, Has v'Shalom, was abused or traumatized. It wasn't because a person wronged you, it was because Hashem wanted that to happen. Now, obviously, there's a lot of emotions and feelings that are going to come along with that whole thing. But this is what you will get in every single class that teaches Breslov Chassidus. That the da'at is that everything comes from Hashem. And this is what the tzaddik teaches us. So therefore, you have to constantly be in the water. And this is the point of the class. For the Mashiach to come both personally and collectively. That we don't have to worry about which toupee is going to become the president of the United States. And we can instead focus on the Jewish leader who's going to save us. The Melech, the king, that's actually going to bring redemption. Not some political figure who has to cater to his party and constituents. For that to happen, anger needs to be nullified. That means that Emunah needs to thrive. And Emunah comes from Da'at. To hover over the water. How often would you say you need to be hovering over the water? Anybody want to guess? Always. That's right. They said to Rabbi Akiva, you have to stop teaching Torah. Because if you keep teaching Torah, the Romans are going to kill us. So he said, you're right, there's a chance that they could, and they're saying that they are, and that's very scary. However, I know for sure that if I stop teaching Torah, we will die. Because the Jewish people are called fish. And if you take the fish out of water, we'll automatically die. Whereas if people come after you while you're in the water, they might get you with the reel, but they might miss. And I'd rather go with the small percentage or the less of a percentage versus a whole percentage. You know, a lot of people as well, they wonder why their prayers don't get answered. Rabbi Nachman says for a person's prayers to get answered, he needs to be hovering over the water. He needs to be holding on to the quality of truth. Because without the quality of truth, you can't have faith. Truth and faith are interconnected. So for this, you need da'at. And we know that this month is the month of the tzaddik. This is Shvat. We know that the letter for this month is the tzadi, meaning that we have a special ability to connect both with the tzaddik within ourselves and the actual tzaddik of the generation. And we know as well that the tree that's in the field, the Eitz HaSadeh, is the same gematria as Da'at. Okay, the tree in the field is the same gematria as Da'at. And the Zohar says, who's this tree that's in the field? The Zohar says it's the tzaddik, it's the yesod. So your ability to be hovering over the water to the extent that when you get into circumstances or difficulties or situations in your life that elicit anger, and instead of acting on the anger, you're actually able to kick into empathy, that's dependent on you knowing that what's happening right now is coming from Hashem. For you to have that, you have to constantly be connected to the teacher who is teaching you that. That is the tzaddik. Now you might say to yourself, well, that sounds like me investing a lot of time into learning something. I have to work. I have to do this. I have to do that. I have to hang out with my friends. I have to chill. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. But you need to understand that the Gemara says that a person who has da'at is lacking nothing. And if a person doesn't have da'at, what does he have? Nothing. Da'at is the key to everything. It says that when Mashiach comes, da'at is going to cover the world like water covers the sea. Because da'at and water is one concept. There's also the deeper reason Rav Natan teaches that when you wake up in the morning and you wash your hands, why are you washing your hands in the morning? Because your hands represent Amunah. Like it said that Moshe Rabbeinu's hands were up, Amunah. So Rabbi Nachman uses this as a proof to show that prayer is faith. Prayer is Amunah, right? But your hands you use in the physical world. These are your tools of operation in the physical world. Meaning that the propensity of your hands is to actually hide faith from you. Because when you use your hands, you're saying, I do it, right? You go to work, you use your hands. When you go to make money, you use your hands. When you go to get something done, you use your hands. So even though the hands are the place of faith, they naturally go and they are busy with the physical world, which conceals Amunah. So what do you do? What's the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning? You need to first put water on your hands. That is, you're putting da'at on your faith. You're cleaning off your lacking of Amunah when you wake up, and you're putting on it the waters of da'at to know that everything comes from Hashem. And then you start your day. We need the water. That is the mikveh. Rabbi Nachman once said, I myself am a mikveh. What is he speaking about? So he says that in Likutei Moharan, that the mikveh is the concept of the waters of da'at. That when you go into the mikveh, you come back out. Why do you, so to speak, have a higher level of consciousness? Or why do you feel refreshed? Why do you feel rejuvenated? Why do you feel renewed? Because you went into God consciousness manifested as water. This is the reason why it's 40 Seiya. Moshe. Yeah? That's right. That the Mem equals 40 in Gematria, and then you have the Shin and the Hey. This is Moshe. 40 Seiya. That's Moshe himself. The tzaddik is a mikveh. So the more that you are hanging out with the tzaddik, the more you are going to be in the waters of da'at, the more that when the situations take place, you're able to respond with Amunah. And then through that, you actually elicit that real Jewish leaders come out of the woodwork and they take hold in the mantle of leadership out of those people who took it by force, who are causing negative things to happen to us. Because they themselves are not leading with faith. They're leading with brazenness. Does anybody have any questions about this lesson? Anybody who might be behind the curtain? Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Is there ever a time?
Do you guys hear something? I hear something.
Is there ever acceptable to be angry?
What's that?
Is there ever a time
To be angry.
that's acceptable to be angry? Yeah, like in terms of like having Torah or whatever it is.
So there's a time to be. There's a time to, so to speak, to stick up for, spirituality, to stick up for Torah, to stick up for Hashem. But the actual emotion of anger is one of the only emotions in the Torah that doesn't really have a positive outlet. Whereas most emotions in Chassidut, it's taught that if you redirect the emotion and you use it for spirituality, then that's what causes it to be a positive emotion. Meaning to take, let's say, your taiva, that you have a taiva for sexuality, a desire for sexuality. If you take that taiva and you reapply it and you desire Hashem, so then the taiva is good. Okay? But when it comes to anger, there is no real way to express anger in a way which is positive. This is why the Arizal himself, he was known for going to extraordinary lengths to never get angry. That Rabbi Nachman himself, even when he was a kid, he actually struggled a lot with anger. But when he was older, his students said about him that they never once saw him get angry. And what was the reason? Because he had attained a lot of da'at. So as a result of that, when, let's say, something happened which went against his own personal will, then he knew it was Hashem's ratzon because he was always in the waters of da'at. So this is the key for us as well. So if you find that you deal with anger, that's not a problem in and of itself, and in fact, you could be cause of the bringing of the Mashiach. But your ability to actually manifest that potential within yourself, you must first have empathy. And empathy comes from knowledge. What type of knowledge? The knowledge that everything comes from Hashem. That you can only get from a real tzaddik. How much do you need to be busy with that? As much as you possibly can, until you are able to act in a way of empathy as opposed to a way of anger. I can't see anybody over there, so I'm imagining a huge smile, fireworks going on from excitement from the answer. Yeah. Okay. What's that? Very good. When it comes to children. So I'm going to bring a very interesting halakha from the Rambam. Okay. So just so everybody understands that this is not even just Chassidut. The Rambam says in halakha that every emotion you want to get to a middle place with. However, there's only a couple of things that you must go to a complete extreme end and never do it all. And one of them, the Rambam says, is get angry. How do you control getting angry? The Rambam even goes so far as to say that there is a time and place that you act angry, such as with your children to teach them a lesson. This is for you, Benny. That you act angry with your children, or let's say maybe with a student or somebody in order to make a point that something is wrong. But the Rambam says in the Mishnah Torah that even though you're acting angry, you don't actually feel angry. Now, it'd be one thing if you see a Hasidic master speak about this and you go, oh, this is a very lofty level. But if the Rambam codifies this as halakha, that means that this is Jewish law. We're not allowed to get angry. And the reason is because anger is the output of avodah zarah. At the moment that a person acts angry, he has renounced his emunah in Hashem, that Hashem is the cause of whatever is taking place. This is the reason why the Torah says that for a person who gets angry, Hashem is not with him. Why? Because he doesn't believe in Hashem at that moment. That's why he's getting angry.
Rabbi,
so therefore, in those situations, one second, that you act angry, the Rambam says all you're doing is acting angry. This takes practice. I do this with my children sometimes. You're not, so again, you might, let's say for instance, you get angry because of what's taking place. So first you need to know it's coming from Hashem. When a person knows something's coming from Hashem, this mitigates the anger. That the child is not ready yet to do these things. So I'm not encouraging that you get angry at your kids. I'm just saying that the Rambam says that there are times that you need to show anger in certain situations, which he says are very limited, to make a very important point if something very wrong is going on.
So if that's the case, then wouldn't that be the same concept with Hashem? That he's acting angry even though he's not?
Yeah, of course. Hashem is no lacking at all. So it doesn't really make sense to say Hashem has any negative emotions. But whenever it says that he has one, it's to teach something, for sure. It's very connected. The question? Just stretching.
What is the balance? What is the balance of effort and that's all God? Like for instance, if you come home, you say your wife is yelling you or not, and you say, oh, it's also God, and I leave with the friends. So how do you know? And then she gets upset at that, but you say, oh, it's all from God. So what's the balance of
So that's the cutest thing I ever heard. You should know that the response to believing that your wife getting upset is from Hashem is not to go to the club with your boys after. No, I got you. Yeah, so leave the room. Yeah. So
no response saying, oh, it's all from God, I'm gonna let him deal with it.
So it's not about necessarily that you, so to speak, are turning your back on your life and you're saying it's Hashem. You're saying that I'm not going to react on my first emotion coming from this, I feel out of control, this is going against my will. That instead your response is on empathy that comes from knowing that this is from Hashem. And if this is from Hashem and he's giving me an opportunity to suppress my anger for empathy, because this is actually the greatest, Rabbi Nachman says, the greatest spiritual act you can do is to suppress anger and instead act empathetically. So therefore, what would you do? You would stay in the house. You would not leave the house. You would show her, because the whole source of the fight is she doesn't feel like you care about her. For sure, you wouldn't go to the banya with your boys after and make plof. Okay? Yeah. This wouldn't be the way to show her that you're empathetic. But a way to show her you are empathetic is not to get angry, or to show her that you understand, even if at first glance you don't understand. Let me just make sure everybody else doesn't have questions. Yeah.
Will Hashem show you at some point why you?
Yes. That's only if you achieve it. That means that your ability to see from Hashem why something happened, you first need to nullify your own understanding. Yes. Come over here. Come. I'm just going to give you a big, nice, right to the side of the face. We'll see how you react in front of the worldwide audience. The way is like this, that when a difficulty comes and my negative emotions are being stirred, at that moment, instead of acting or thinking, I say to myself, Hashem, this is from you. Why are you doing this? Because you love me. Where is your love in this? Because this is bringing me closer to you. Therefore, I'm giving this over to you, and I'm trusting you. The sooner you can mean those words, the sooner you will see why whatever's happening to you is happening to you. The longer that you resist whatever is taking place, either intellectually in your mind or in your actions, in your thoughts, in your feelings, to that degree, it will take you time to figure out why this is taking place for you. But very simply, something to understand is when you're growing spiritually, for you to get from one level to the next, you always have to be tested in your emunah. You always have to be tested in your faith.
Rabbeinu.
Yeah, David.
So what's it called? Like when every time, we said this before, that when every time a person gets angry, it leads him into despair, yush.
Right, that's another negative effect for sure. Very good.
And also, one thing I need to add is like also any kinds of anger, like frustration, resentment, also relates to that.
Yes, they're all under the same umbrella. Very good. Thank you for fleshing that out. There's a question here actually from one of the students. Says, is there a need to feel happy when we turn anger into empathy? If so, does Rabbi Nachman give advice on how to respond to those situations with empathy and happiness? Yeah, so Rabbi Nachman says, leave the room and go to Ibodid. Because if you're going to sit in the situation, you're not going to be able to access the fact that it's coming from Hashem. You're going to have to actually say those words out loud. It's the saying of it that actualizes what you believe. So this is something that I used to practice a lot, that like, let's say, for instance, while I was working on bringing this to my life, making it real for me, that in all situations, that was my response. You have to practice it. So let's say, for instance, not that this ever happened, but let's say I get into a situation with my parents, okay? And something happens, and it's not the sweetest situation in the world. And everything inside of me wants to blow up. So what did I do? I would leave the room, and even if I was crying and I'm holding myself back, I'm saying, Hashem, this is so painful, but this is from you. It's not from my parents. And you could, yes, sure. Yeah, you have to be honest for sure. But just the saying out loud of this is from you, it's not from them. You should, if you really allow yourself to feel that, you should immediately feel a decrease in the intensity of your emotion. Okay. So the real, one second, David. The real way to be able to draw this empathy is to continually increase your da'at. That every single day you are working towards bringing Rabbi Nachman's Torah into your life by speaking it out. Because Rabbi Nachman says the way that you internalize Torah and you turn it into da'at is through speech. It's the speaking out of Torah that turns it into da'at, meaning it's internalized in your heart. So you have to every day learn this Torah, And also every day you need to speak it out in your hibodedut to Hashem and ask Hashem to be able to internalize it. When you do that, that's what makes it da'at, so that when the situation comes out, you're able to actually feel it in your own heart. So this is the answer, and this is not, I know this is not a quick fix, but there is no quick fix here. The Jewish people must be connected to Torah. The Torah that they must be connected to is not even just learning halakha or learning Gemara. It's specifically, most importantly, the Torah that is imbuing in you the fact of emunah, that everything that's happening is happening from Hashem. As a result of that, you will then come to learn Gemara. You will then come to learn halakha. Why? Because if Hashem's the cause of everything, so then I would love to learn what He wants me to do. But the start is da'at. And for this, you need a very great tzaddik who's able to teach you that everything is from Hashem and that you believe it. And this is why hibodedut is so important. Yeah. Oh, very good. So in Chassidut and Kabbalah, it's taught, and Rabbi Nachman brings down the Kutamaran, that whenever it speaks about Hashem's anger, it means that He's hiding from you. If Hashem's angry, it means He's concealing Himself from you. Okay? So we're learning from this, in fact, that where is the revelation of God in the world? It comes from true tzaddikim, when they reveal themselves. So in this Torah, we're learning that those true tzaddikim that we need in our life to be able to help us achieve our spiritual greatness as an individual and collectively, we need them to come out and for us to connect to them. However, Rabbi Nachman says that when the Jewish people deal with anger, which is a lack of emunah, then Jewish authority, which is authentic and genuine, goes into exile because Hashem is angry. So because He's angry, He's hiding Himself. How does He hide Himself? So we know that the Shekhinah is found in Talmidei Chachamim, that they're in those tzaddikim. So the revelation of godliness comes from Moshe and the other tzaddikim themselves. Okay? So this is the concept of anger. Now, how do I, so to speak, get a revelation of Hashem in my life that He stops hiding from me? So Rabbi Nachman says a very quick way to be able to activate that is to suppress your own anger, which is a distance from Hashem, and act with empathy instead. And by doing that, you get a reciprocal act from Hashem, that He also nullifies His own anger, and He reveals Himself to you. Yeah. Right. That's right. That you missed this part of the class. Rabbi Nachman saying the fact that you have anger is not a problem. The fact that you have anger is actually could be the cause of something messianic. That if you take that anger and you suppress it and you act with empathy instead, this is literally the highest spiritual act. He says that the Ruach HaMashiach is in that person. And it actually causes the Mashiach himself to come on the scene. So if you find that you deal naturally with anger, you don't have to say, why nebach me? Why do I have to struggle so much with this? Instead, we're going to flip it. You're going to empower yourself and say that I have the ability to bring Mashiach in an even greater way than somebody else, both personally and collectively, by turning my anger and turning it into empathy. Well, I don't know why I always think you have a question. One second. There's a question about, 1 second, David. What if the environment you're in doesn't allow for you to walk away and say this mantra to Hashem? Maybe you're in a professional setting and you can't just walk away, or you're taking care of your children and you need to supervise them for safety. So it's a very good question. So the answer would be that your ability to handle those situations calmly is by utilizing the time that you have when you're not in that situation. The way to, let's say, think about it is, let's say, for instance, you're an athlete. Like someone told me, when I was in Miami, they're much more into, let's say, the secular world than you guys are holding over here. So I was hearing a lot about sports and a lot about celebrities and Forbes, billionaire people, whatever. I don't know what was going on, but there was a lot of this talk going on. So anyway, I was with a driver. He was driving me and he was telling me that Tom Brady apparently is back in the NFC Championship. And they had a video of him on SportsCenter of like these, so to speak, these, I don't know what they're called. They're like these figures that are trying to get him, so to speak, as he's trying to move in the pocket to make a pass. And they are presenting themselves like they're the defense. So while they're coming after him, and then he also has that these machines are also like receivers, but they don't actually have hands, they're just holes in them. And he has to get it literally right inside the circle when it happens. So apparently he got every single one in despite whatever was going on. That's what makes him the GOAT, okay? So they would tell you, he himself would tell you, and all of the athletes, Michael Jordan, all of them, what is their ability, so to speak, to be great when the lights turn on, is the fact that they're preparing to be great when the lights are off. It's the preparation when it's not intense, that I don't, so to speak, that when the intensity dims down, I now go on Netflix and I start watching shows because I'm so overwhelmed from the day. But instead of doing that, I do hibodedut.
So what you're saying is, however you react to the scenario, you react however way, because you're not capable of going and
You don't have a better way to deal with
there
it.
is no other way.
You don't have a better response.
When you're off time,
But when you're on off time, instead of your natural response will be to chill then because you're so overwhelmed by your negative emotions, right? So I don't want to be busy working on myself when things are not hard. However, that is the exact time to work on yourself. The exact time to do hibodedut and to work on yourself when the situation is not taking place. And by doing that consistently every day, then when the situations do take place, you will have the capabilities, the wherewithal, the arsenal to be able to deal with that situation in live time. This is my best suggestion for you.
Rabbeinu,
1 second. Let's just see if other people have questions, David. I do like your enthusiasm, though.
now one thing,
1 second, David. Other questions are here. Thank you. Yes.
Before you were talking about how, like, it's not necessarily a bad thing to get angry, and you said that it could be like messianic and root and the whole thing. So is the issue angry or to express your anger or both? Or
It's not the getting, it's the acting on it.
so it's expressing your anger.
It's the acting on it. Yeah, it's the acting on it. Now, obviously, as time goes on and you work to bring da'at into your heart that everything comes from Hashem, your anger will not increase, it will decrease in certain situations. But even if you do get angry, you don't have to think to yourself, why am I always getting angry? It's okay. It's the acting on it that is problematic. And not just to think to yourself as well, I don't know what else to do. So we're saying that you have to attain something called empathy. That comes from hovering over the water. Your ability to hover over the water constantly every day will ultimately lead to, if you pray enough on it, that you will be able to see in the situations when the conflict does come up, you're able not to respond to the emotion that's taking place. And you are able to internalize the fact that this is from Hashem. It doesn't mean it's pleasant. It doesn't mean you're loving what's happening. But ultimately, as time goes on more and more, if you work hard enough at it and Hashem helps you enough, you'll be able to see that this decreases over time. Just want to make sure other people don't have questions. Was there someone else here? How do you know that if you and your spouse are arguing and you get so angry, it's from Hashem or your Yetzer Hara? So the basic premise that Rabbi Nachman is teaching us is that everything is from Hashem. So if you're not sure whether what's happening from Hashem is from Hashem or not, so the answer is yes, it is. That's the beginning of your whole redemption from that situation, to know that it is from Hashem. Oh, I've been working on a business deal. This guy said he's going to come through. And all of a sudden he puts cold feet and he says, sorry, I'm not interested. Even though he's the one who contacted me and I was working on the whole thing for him. So what's the reason that happened? Because Hashem wanted him to back out of the deal. There is no other reason for why that happened. Nothing that person did. And even if the person chooses to do that, it can't be that he chooses to do something that Hashem doesn't want to be happening. This is the entire messianic nature of Rabbi Nachman's Torah and advice. It's all based on this one principle. Now, when you have internalized this principle, you're able to respond in a way which is healthy, in a way which is encouraging, in a way which helps you to grow, in a way which actually causes you to transcend yourself and to reach heights that you can never imagine. It all starts with this one concept, that everything that's happening is happening because Hashem wants it to be happening. That doesn't mean that's the end of it, right? It could be that Hashem is causing this to happen because he wants you to respond in a certain way. It doesn't mean that Hashem likes that thing, kivechol, so to speak, but he is for sure causing it, because if not, it couldn't happen. Any other
Rabbeinu,
questions? 1 second, David. I want to see if other people have questions. Any other new questions from other people who haven't asked questions? Either on the side over here. I don't know. I'm just pointing. Hopefully they'll be able to see. Okay, so now we'll go back to old people. Benjamin, go ahead.
I myself, and I'm sure many people can attest to that. Can't hear you. People have been-
Talk up. Don't just wear your Breslov kippah. You got to be loud and proud. Yes. Yes.
And whenever we talk to these therapists or these group therapies and we express how we feel, like for example, let's say I have anger,
Yeah.
a lot of the times they would say stuff like, "Oh, okay, if you have anger, go punch this."
Yeah.
You're like, let it out, but just don't direct it to the person, but just let it out
Somewhere else.
poke a hole in the wall.
Right.
Something, go shooting.
Right.
Just
let out the aggression.
That whole principle of letting it out, is that a bad thing to do, or is it something where it's promoting anger, just channeling it differently?
Good question. So the question is, we know that, let's say, for instance, when you go see a therapist, let's say you deal with anger, which is a very common emotion to deal with, and it's very easy to see that people go see therapists, often they deal with anger. So what would they say? So Benny's saying that sometimes they will suggest or encourage you to use the anger in a way that you are acting on the anger, but in a safe way. Meaning, instead of lashing out on the person that I'm angry at, I'm going to go into my room and punch my pillow. Okay, which is a real thing. So the Torah teaches that this itself actually promotes more anger. That acts of anger or acts of doing anything promote the thing that you're feeling. So if you want to decrease your anger, you would have to engage in emotion which is contradictory to it, even if you don't feel it. Like getting up and dancing. Or start thanking Hashem. Even though that's not how you feel at all. The Orach Chaim explains in his commentary in the Torah that everything that's negative in the world, whenever you engage in that negative thing, you attach yourself more to the energy of that thing, and it overcomes you more, not less. So the reason why therapists tell you to do this is because they don't actually know the source of the anger, that there is a way to deal with the anger through da'at, because they don't profess any belief in God. That's not part of the protocol or the it's not part of the modality in which they help you with the problem. So they're looking for ways to help you deal with it in a way which is safe. Okay, but Rabbi Nachman is not just looking for you to, so to speak, act in a way which is safe, that doesn't harm another person. He actually wants you to have an inner transformation. The whole entire essence of Chassidut, what makes Chassidut different than any other Torah, is that Chassidut has the ability to literally transform the inner state of a person. Whereas, let's say, for instance, you might learn Musar, and I'm going to act not to act in the way that I want to, and maybe I'll succeed every time, but I'm not going to actually feel any different. Okay, but because Chassidut is directly corresponding to what's called Da'at, that is a knowledge, a God consciousness, which goes deeper than the superficial. So by bringing this into myself, I actually have an inner transformation, to the extent that as time goes on, my inner state actually changes. Whereas in the past, I might feel anger. Now I won't actually feel that. I might feel peace. Whereas in the past, I might feel sadness. Instead of just not acting on it, I literally will feel joy instead. This obviously takes a lot of hard work. It takes a lot of dedication. It takes a lot of every single day doing the best that you can and bringing these teachings into your life and acting on the advice of the tzaddik who's giving you that chassidus, and not giving up on it. Any final questions?
Rabbeinu?
Okay, so the schedule for the... Yes, David.
By the way, I'm also want to say is that it
You love
says
me?
in the yeah, it says in the Torah that says "V'nishmartem meod lenafshotechem." It's important to guard our health, but
Right.
when a person gets angry, it weakens the liver.
That's right. Very good. Thank you, David. Okay. So this is the point. And we know obviously that stress is the greatest cause of illness. Anger is obviously very stressful to anybody who feels it. and and you also, just the last point that you should take with you before we say the schedule for the rest of the week. This is a very empowering thing, and this is something that this is one of the main reasons I was able to get out of my sadness. That is that Rabbi Nachman teaches something which is very transformative. That is, whatever it is that you struggle with, let's say it's anger or sadness or lack of energy or frustration, or let's say you wear, clothes that are not so cool, whatever it is, like let's say the problem over here, whatever is going on for anybody in their situation. So Rabbi Nachman says the whole reason you deal with that problem is because that problem is called a klipa. A klipa means a peel or a shell. Why is there a peel or a shell that is in the form of that thing? Because you have a fruit in that peel, which is the opposite of that thing. That means that if you deal with anger, let's say, Rabbi Nachman says you must have within you the ability to achieve a very, very high level of inner peace. And the anger itself is the peel to that peace. And you have to unpeel it in order to get to that place. So for me, whereas I always felt, oh my gosh, I'm always sad, I'm so prone to sadness, everything makes me sad, and then I want to connect to sad things, and I constantly am dealing with depression, right? So the doctors say it's genetic, and it's also sociological. So everything is kind of like hinting towards that this is always going to be a thing for me, and I can't get out. Comes Rabbi Nachman to tell you, if you deal with depression, it means you must have the capacity to have a higher level of joy than even a person who is not prone to sadness. And to know that you have that waiting on the other side is going to give you the motivation to push beyond your natural state and to achieve tikkun. Because if I know that what's waiting for me is not just stam happiness, but the type of simcha that I could teach the whole world how to be happy, despite the fact that I'm depressed and in a psych ward. So now I really have motivation to leave this state. Or if I have anger, that I know that what's waiting for me on the other end is literally the greatest state of inner peace. Now I'm going to have the motivation, no matter the struggle or the difficulty or the challenge, to every day get back up and try my best. Because I know that what's waiting for me is not just to get rid of the anger, but is to literally feel shalom. Okay. The schedule the rest of the week. Bezrat Hashem, Monday through Thursday, 10:30 a.m. We have Likutei Halachot. That is taking these deeper teachings of Likutei Moharan and making them very, very practical. So it's a very important class. This is 10:30 a.m. on Zoom. You will get the links from Benjamin in all the Tzion Breslov groups. If you're not in those groups and you want to be in those groups, I see that there's new people here, probably from the trip this past week, thank God. So please reach out to Benjamin Roberts or email us at tzionbreslovproject@gmail.com. We will add you to our WhatsApp group so you know when these classes are. We also will have a Tuesday night men's Likutei Moharan class. We're towards the end of a very, very important Torah that has to do with secular wisdom, everybody's favorite topic, and simcha, joy, and the connection between these two things. So you should definitely come to that class. And if you want to watch online and you're a woman, so you can watch on Zoom. Okay, that's at 9 p.m. And then Bezrat Hashem, Thursday night, I hope that we also have another class at 9 p.m. as well. Those classes are in Od Yosef Chai and the place that we're in right now. If you want the address as well, you can email us. If you want to watch online, so then you can watch on Zoom, Bezrat Hashem. Thank you, everybody, for coming to the class tonight. I hope you guys all have an amazing, amazing week. And Bezrat Hashem, that you're able to take the lessons out of these classes and not just go home and start your next day, but you pray to Hashem, Hashem, please help me to act in a way of empathy instead of acting in my anger. If you say that every day out loud to Hashem, you will see that you feel compelled to not just act on your anger, because the speech itself is what actualizes potential. And by the way, this is a deep reason why your mouth is in between your head and your heart. Because your head represents potential. Your thoughts are only potential. You can't show them to anybody. They exist in a vacuum. Your heart, though, feels tremendously intensely. The heart represents actual. How do you bring from the head to the heart? Only through the thing that's right in between, that's speaking it out. The more that you struggle in any area, just take that upon yourself, the more I need to talk about it. Unless you think, oh my gosh, how much do I need to speak about this thing? So imagine if it would go away, right? If I gave you a solution to a problem, even if it's something unusual, it's not protocol, it's not what everybody else is doing. But if you know what's waiting for you as ability to actually transform this state, so then this is a very beautiful thing. Oh, wow. Everybody also, we have Tikkun Klalis here. I highly suggest that you take these. This is very good for a lot of things. I don't want to get into it because I'm going to stay here for another hour talking about it then. But everybody should take it, and you should say it. Bezrat Hashem, if you have the merit to say it every day is great. And for sure, if you have a struggle and you have, let's say, things don't go the way you want to in the area of sexuality, so this is a very good thing to say after the fact. Okay, to the extent that Rabbi Nachman says, you will have caused no negative ramifications as a result. Okay, everybody have an amazing, amazing night.